referred to as observations are inherently theory laden. Do you agree with that?
Um, yes, I have a question to clarify though. What
Sure.
about machine, like a pressure sensor? Is the number that it gives theory laden?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Why?
Why? Because you're presupposing the paradigm that the external physical world is real. You're presupposing that the machine and parts in question possess identity. You're presupposing that they possess identity over time. You're presupposing the causal principle. You're presupposing that the world around us operates in some regular ways as opposed to the appearance therein, aren't you?
Okay, so basic philosophy is what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, what we're talking about that we have a variety of pillars or fundamental parameters which cannot be proven by science themselves, but are adopted as real, true states. And then we do that. We from those beliefs we interpret sense datum that we come into contact with. Now, when it comes to radiometric isotope dating and rocks,
Hmm.
if we start with the paradigm of young Earth creationism, then
Hmm.
the extrapolation from a putative daughter element backwards to a putative parent element, that retrodiction will be false with respect to the paradigm of the young Earth creationist. So, in order to have a correct retrodictive extrapolation from a putative daughter element to the parent element, you have to have a paradigm that is conducive or commensurate with that retrodiction, right?
Hmm.
Isn't that correct?
Could you please rephrase it? I was thinking about something and I didn't quite.
You're when you come to certain conclusions or
Hmm.
that you might call observations, but there are no neutral observations. The conclusions are derived from an inherently theory laden system. And that theory laden system is governed by one or more paradigms. For example, one of the greatest books in the history of the philosophy of science, which I have yet to read and I really want to read to it, is called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn. It's required reading for anybody who takes any courses in the philosophy of science. And Kuhn says that science doesn't make revolutionary steps by individual discoveries, but by paradigm changes. And it is the paradigms that we hold to or that we abandon and adopt new paradigms that give rise to new filters and means of interpreting sense data. Okay?
So, like from flat Earth to the globe Earth, that was a paradigm shift.
No, no, that's a myth that there was ever a widespread belief in a flat Earth. That's a myth. Okay, okay, that's people
Hmm.
have heard this. This is false. Even the ancient Greeks knew by measuring the movement of shadows. They were able to calculate with almost mathematical precision the circumference of the Earth. Okay. So this idea that it was widespread is false. Okay. Now, is it the case that some people somewhere may have believed that? Sure, but this was not widespread. Okay. So getting back to radiometric isotope
Yes,
dating.
it was.
I mean, it was in medieval Europe. It
No,
was.
sir, no, that is categorically 100% false. And if you don't believe me, look up the work by a scholar. It's called the Myth of the Flat Earth, where he shows that it is entirely historically false that in medieval times there was widespread belief in a flat Earth. This is
Yeah, but
historically false.
by medieval
Okay.
times, yes,
Dude,
but it was late antiquity when the Greeks discovered that the Earth was round.
no, it
Before
wasn't. It
that, most
was
people thought the Earth
400
was flat,
BC.
and the Chinese, Aztecs.
Sir, listen to me carefully.
I don't know who you're
It
calling.
may be the case that there were some isolated people here and there that might have believed it, but there was not widespread belief that the earth was flat. You cannot show that historically. Okay. So stop.
Can
So
you
we're
show
not.
there was
We're,
widespread belief that it was round?
okay. Well. When they look at the sun being round and circular, and they look at the moon, and they recognize that the moon was spherical. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon even back then to come to the conjecture that the Earth is probably spherical. Okay.
Dude, it
Now,
was
Why
known
would they
by
think that the
ancient
sun and the
Greeks,
moon are
look,
the
we're not
same?
going to get on
Arabs,
it. We're not
the
going to get on a
Able to
tangent
answer the
about.
question.
We're not going to get on a tangent off of the topic onto flat Earthism. Okay. Now, the bottom line is this: it wasn't that the Greeks discovered that the Earth was spherical. They used mathematics to, at least according to their calculations, confirm what they believed. Okay. Now, getting back to radiometric isotope dating, with who was the gentleman I was talking to?
CaptainCosmic here.
Okay.
Better
So,
example of paradigm shift then would be what was it? Heliocentrism transitioning from Earth centrism.
right, from the Aristotelian view,
Mm-hmm.
okay, to the Copernican view, okay, which would
Okay, so that would
be
be a paradigm shift.
yes, that was a paradigm shift. Okay, and so
Was that paradigm shift not?
What's
Sorry,
that?
was that paradigm shift not caused by a congregate of data to go
No,
from Earth-centric to
no,
heliocentric?
no. What it was based upon was that there Copernicus, with the discovery of the telescope, and he observed the
Mm-hmm.
movements of the planets, he
Mm-hmm.
noticed that there were certain anomalies or perturbations in the movement of planets, where it appeared that sometimes the planets, and they didn't understand they were planets like we understand them now, but they seemed to have what was called like a retrograde. Okay, some of them seemed to be moving backwards, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
Copernicus being the genius that he was in calculations, he realized that the Aristotelian view of the geocentric view, um, although it could explain to a certain degree these perturbations, that a heliocentric view offered more accuracy of with predictive capability. And
Oh, and
so
that's what we have with Old Earth.
no, that's incorrect. That's a false equivalency, which I will be glad. Excuse
Hey,
me.
Darth, Jack is
I will
watching.
be. Okay, that's wonderful. So, comparing
Hey Darth, fake it
the
till you make
old
it. TJump's
Earth.
in the voice call.
Okay. Do you guys really want me to lock down the room? Okay. Do you want
Oh,
to
I'm
ruin it
sorry.
for everybody?
Nigger.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If I have any more outbursts, I will just server mute everybody's microphone, and you will ruin it for everybody else. All I have to do is type in 5 letters. Okay. So if you want to be an asshole and you want to ruin it for everybody, you want to ruin it for somebody spontaneously trying to ask a question without being disruptive. If you want to be an asshole, like the asshole that you are, then I'll just server mute everybody and I'll just keep Cosmic open. So you just let me know if you want to make it worse for everybody. Okay. So Cosmic.
Yeah.
Um, so you've given a false equivalency. Okay, because there's a difference between predictive capability versus a retrodictive explanation. Do you understand the difference?
I understand the difference. I fail to see how.
Okay. Because retrodiction is not the same as prediction. Retrodiction, prediction. Do you understand the difference?
I have a clarifying question to see if I understand
Okay.
this.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, kind of keeping in subject with the radiometric dating. When a paleontologist predicts where and when a fossil is that not a
You,
prediction?
you think I haven't heard this?
I'm sure you have. I'm just asking to clarify,
Okay.
see if I understand what you're talking about.
Are you referring to a specific fossil that you have in mind?
Yeah, Tiktaalik. It was predicted to be found in a certain
Right.
geological layer
Yeah.
based on
And
models.
did they not tell you that layers beneath Tiktaalik they found footprints of tetrapods?
Yes.
Oops.
Well,
Oops.
no, because they predicted that
No.
tetrapods.
Yeah. What you're experiencing right now is what is called a resistance to falsification. Okay. Now, even certain predictions that might come true do not ipso facto make the theoretical construct correct. You would need a long list of successful predictions in order to increasingly convince people of the accuracy of the theory, but still, that still won't do that. So, for example, do you remember my discussion about instrumentalism versus realism?
The difference between it's just
Right,
pragmatically useful
right.
versus it's actually.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Many scientists are instrumentalists. Some are realists. Some are a mixture of the two. So predictive success is not a guarantee that the theory is correct.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's not a
Okay.
deductive case; it's an inductive case.
Now, typically, when you raise the issue about tectonic, the fact that
Mm-hmm.
one person made a prediction in a certain location and it came true, this in and of itself does not demonstrate that evolution is true, nor does it demonstrate that it's old. You're going to need to have more than just one or two correct predictions. Okay.
Well, yeah, it
So, for
doesn't prove its
example,
case on its own, but it's more indicative of it.
no, sir, you're not understanding. Okay, listen carefully. You're
Okay.
making a big mistake about tectonic. Listen
Mm-hmm.
carefully. Before
Okay.
I told you, did you know? All right, you are banned. Okay, there you go.
Hey, Darth, can you
Yeah.
talk when you're done with this fossil conversation?
Do.
What just happened?
I think he's banning an account or something.
Yeah, he's
saying.
banned. Okay, so tectonic. They found footprints in sedimentary layers below the layers that they found tectonic that were tetrapods. Okay, so the discovery of the footprints of tetrapods undermines the theory about tectonic. Okay, that he is a transitional form because tetrapods were allegedly came after tectonic. Okay,
Question about that.
so,
About the
here.
term transition.
Okay, first of all, do you believe? Listen, really simple. Do you believe that the fossil record is weighty evidence for gradualism?
I would kind of put myself in the middle of gradualism and what was the punctuated equilibrium?
Sir, listen to me.
Yeah.
Is the fossil record evidence of an evolutionary of is it evidence of transition?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's where you're wrong. I'm going to read to you from.
Are you trying to pull up the point of punctuated equilibrium?
I'm going to read to you from Dr. Eugene Koonen's book, The Logic of Chance, The Nature and Origin of Biological Evolution. This man is a super genius when it comes to molecular biology, and he's a staunch advocate of the theory of evolution. Okay? This guy is
Mine incoming.
okay. Well, why do you say that? Why do you say that?
It wasn't me. It was someone else.
Yeah, Load, why do you say that?
Hey, Darth, can we talk after you're done this fossil conversation?
Load, why do you say that? I'm speaking to you, Load. Load, do you want to be banned? Okay, welcome to my ban list. Okay, since you don't want to respond to me, you want to heckle, you want to say quote mine incoming. So in other words, notice the knee-jerk reaction that any
Darth,
quotation.
Darth.
Okay, yeah,
I
I'm
was.
not going to be
I
interrupted.
don't want to. I'm sorry. I don't want to get somebody else banned. I was the one that said quote mine incoming. I didn't realize you were talking to somebody else.
Okay, since you're honest, I'm not going to ban you or him. Would you please not do it? Now, if you want to say that I'm quote mining, you're going to have to provide sufficient background information to support that. Other than that's like I said, well, you gave herpes to your girlfriend. How would you like me doing that?
Oh, well, do you want the background information right now?
Okay, yeah. How do you know that what I'm about to read is quote mining?
Because every single time a creationist quotes an evolutionary biologist about anything, it's a quote mine.
Wait, Darth,
Okay,
you were talking to me?
okay, sir. Okay,
Did you have a question?
Okay, you're muted.
You said
Okay.
something to me.
Okay, right there. That is not something that you can support. Okay, that is an outrageous, ridiculous global statement. Every time a creationist quotes an evolution, it's quote mining. Really?
In my experience, yes.
No, in your experience, did you go back and check the context of all of the quotations?
Yes, really.
Every time I've checked,
Did you?
they have been a quote mine.
No. Did you check? Did you check the primary material every time a creationist does that? Did you go back to the original context every time and check it?
Every time I have checked it or somebody else has checked it, it's been a quote mine.
No. And how many instances did you check?
Exactly 362.
Okay, so you're lying. Okay, good. Now you're banned for lying. Okay, you're done.
He wasn't lying.
362 and a half. Okay, yeah. Okay, he's banned now.
No, he said 362, not 362 and a half.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so he's banned for lying. Okay, so let's get back to our discussion about paradigms and radiometric isotope dating.
Okay. So what's the quote?
So here's now you told me that the fossil record is a good exemplar of transition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is from Dr. Eugene. Okay, this is from Dr. Eugene Koonin from The Logic of Chance, The Nature and Origin
How
of
do you spell
Biological
Koonin?
Evolution. It's Koonin, and this is on page 37.
Dr. Koonin.
Dr. Eugene Koonin. Okay.
Eugene. Koonin.
Now, when you read this book, it makes your head spin because he's beyond crazy smart. Okay. So here's what he said. Okay, this guy is a staunch evolutionist. He's an expert on not only microbiology but how it relates to the theory of evolution. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what he says. Okay, and by the way, Stephen Jay Gould also concurred with this as well. Okay, now the evolutionists go, "Oh, quote mining." Well, that's the knee jerk reaction that they make without proof. When they are upset when creationists take true statements from evolutionists that are being transparent about the problem with the theory of evolution.
It's your daddy.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to lock down the room. All right. Here we go.
Darth, explicit's your daddy. He's owned you every single time you debated.
We'll wait till
Darth, how does it feel for explicit to be your daddy?
Okay, so he's banned now. Okay, he's banned from this room, and he punishes everybody in the room. Okay.
Darth, explicit's your fucking daddy, you little.
Okay, so everybody gets punished because we have these little teenagers with small schlongs, and they wish they had bigger ones, and they want to be real men, but they don't know how to be real men, so they pull this stuff. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so where were we? Who was I talking to here? Captain. Okay, here we go. Okay, Captain.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you said the FOSSA record is a good example of trend. Okay, so here's Dr. Eugene Kuhn. The general lack of transitional forms between species in the fossil record is a constant theme in evolutionary biology. Let me repeat that again. The general lack of transitional forms between species in the fossil record is a constant theme in evolutionary biology. Darwin recognized this problem and traditionally interpreted it, along with paleontologists in the Darwinian tradition, as a reflection of the dramatic incompleteness of the record. Okay? In other words, the reflection of the dramatic incompletion of the record means that the fossil record doesn't exemplify transition, it exemplifies stasis. However, listen to this, extensive accumulation of paleontological data in the 20th century helped very little, if at all. Let me read this again. Extensive accumulation of paleontological data in the 20th century helped very little, if at all. Do you know what the accumulation of paleontological data is referring to?
I'm assuming the geological column.
No, it's referring to what we call the fossil record.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So this is Dr. Eugene Koonin, a staunch advocate of evolution. He's a brilliant in mathematics and molecular biology, and he's a complete expert on the theory of evolution. Okay? When he is cited by other scholars in the area and papers, he has a score that's above 200 when most people who are considered stellar are down in like the 40s and 50s. This is how brilliant this guy is. This is no outlier. This is no quack. This book is a defense of the theory of evolution. So what he says about the fossil record is absolutely contradictory to what you said. Extensive accumulation of paleontological data in the 20th century, i.e. the fossil record, helped very little, if at all, so a different perspective emerged. First, I zoomed out, okay?
Mm-hmm.
First in the quantum evolution of George Gaylord Simpson, then in the full-fledged form of punctuated equilibrium concept of Stephen Jay Gould. In other words, there was a knee-jerk reaction that individuals who had the best working knowledge of the fossil record realized,
Explicit's your
oh
fucking
shit,
daddy. Shut
okay,
the fuck
all
up,
right,
pussy ass.
let me lock down.
It's your daddy. He's gonna fuck you in that. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna intellectually shit on you.
Well, every time they circumvent these means, then I just go to the founders and they give me more power, okay? So now we're going to just have to change the coding that when somebody new enters the room, they're going to be blocked as well. It's just a matter of coding, okay? Okay, so Cosmic. Okay, let me continue. So Gould and Eldridge popularized punctuated equilibrium. Now, you invoked punctuated equilibrium earlier, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. They would never have needed to come up with this concept or advocated for it had the fossil record exemplified transition rather than stasis. So the very theory itself of punctuated equilibrium is an indictment upon the fossil record exemplifying transition. Okay? So he goes.
Wouldn't that be a better example of conclusions based on evidence because they didn't
No, you're
find the
not. You're
evidence
not.
there?
You're not understanding. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Punctuated equilibrium is a kind of ad hoc maneuver in order to explain away the bankruptcy of the fossil record,
And how do you know that?
exemplifying why. Because of the theory that when after let me read this to you again. Dr. Eugene Koonin is stating it right. The general lack of transitional forms between fossils, the species, and the fossil record is a constant theme in evolutionary biology. Darwin recognized this problem and traditionally interpreted it, along with paleontologists in the Darwinian tradition, as a reflection of the dramatic incompleteness of the record. However, extensive accumulation of paleontological data in the 20th century helped very little, if at all. So a different perspective emerged. Why did this perspective emerge?
Because
Sir?
the data didn't support the previous
That's
view of full
correct.
gradualism.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that this theory arose in order to explain away in an ad hoc maneuver the problem that the fossil record does not indicate gradualism or transition. It exemplifies stasis. So, in order to account for the theory of evolution being true and the evidence that the fossil record exemplifies stasis, they had to come up with a new theory to explain the stasis in the fossil record. So Dr. Eugene Koonin is saying precisely what I am saying to you. Okay. And this man is about as expert as it gets. So he goes on. Gould and Eldridge, hold on. Gould and Eldridge collected extensive data indicating the history of the great majority of animal species, as reflected in the fossil record, represented mostly stasis. That is virtual lack of change. Let me repeat this back to you again. Gould and Eldridge, the ones who came up with punctuated equilibrium, or at best popularized it, collective extensive evidence indicating that the history of the great majority of animal species, as reflected in the fossil record, represents mostly stasis. That is a virtual lack of change. Stasis is punctuated by sudden disappearance of species, followed by a rapid replacement of new species. The implication of this pervasive pattern is that speciation is rapid compared to the duration of stasis. That is, he's talking about the ad hoc maneuver of punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated equilibrium is put on the table to explain away the glaring problem in the fossil record. Okay? So, what we have here is a decisive quote. Is it quote mining? No. Okay. Is it out of context? No. So you are of the belief, as many people out there, unless you get into graduate levels or maybe at an undergraduate level, you'll learn that the fossil record exemplifies stasis rather than transition. But the popular representation of the fossil record that you will consume out there, usually in documentaries, is that the fossil record is good evidentiary support for gradualism, which it is not.
Could you tell me what again is the name of the book and the page? I'm trying to find the quote.
It is.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but
it is The Logic of Chance, the Nature and Origin of Biological Evolution by Dr. Eugene Koonin, Koonin.
All right, what's the page number?
The page number is starting at the bottom of page 37. Here, and the title of the section is Punctuated Equilibrium and the Inadequacy of Gradualism.
All right, preview pages. Indexes, page 5. Oh, I gotta go down. 13. Page. All right, sorry, one more time. Page number
37. Last
37.
paragraph on page 37.
Alrighty. History. Principle was challenged the simplicity by a piece. Gene and genome duplication. Yeah, today.
The bottom line is this: you've been duped to believe that the fossil record is an excellent exemplar of transition. Partly because, for example, if you went to a museum or you watch a documentary, what they will show you is stuff like depiction of what are extinct aquatic skeletons, and then they're placed in sequential order.
Mm-hmm.
But the order is completely conjectural. It's based upon homology that's saying, well, these skeletal features seem similar to those skeletal features over there. So that, because evolution is true, there must be an ancestor-descendant relationship. Over 10 years ago, I asked a PhD in evolution. I forget what his name was. I should have written it down. I said, Doctor, what is the empirical methodology to show an ancestor-descendant relationship between any mineralized fossil? He started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? And he goes, because you know the answer. He goes, just by you asking me the question. He goes, I know that you know the answer. I said, well, why don't you tell the audience? And he says, there is none. Okay? There is no empirical methodology to show an ancestor-descendant relationship. What there is a conjecture and extrapolation, which is not an empirical methodology per se to show an ancestor-descendant relationship. It's because they already believe because they've drunk the Kool-Aid that evolution happened. Therefore, because there's similarities in certain skeletal features, that these must be interrelated into some type of ancestor-descendant relationship. But that's just begging the question. Okay? So the point is this: you told me that the fossil record exemplified good evidentiary support for the general theory of evolution and that it represented transition. But it doesn't. I run into this problem year after year after year with people because they've been brainwashed from the evolutionary propaganda that they get from museums or documentaries or maybe high school or undergraduate works, that the fossil record is this great evidentiary support. It's not. In fact, the so-called fossil record is what you would expect to find if there was a massive worldwide geological upheaval resulting in numerous tsunamis flooding the continents recurrently, resulting in the flooding of the continents, just like the worldwide flood. And then you would have certain animal groups that would be buried, but the ones that were buried would just be few and far between, because most of them would drown but wouldn't be buried. In other words, in order for them to be buried, they would have to be buried very rapidly by sedimentary material. Otherwise, their flesh and their bones would decay. So the fossil record, contrary to widespread belief in academia, it is more commensurate with a worldwide flood than it actually is Darwinian gradualism.
So what I'm reading here on a book by a Sir Donald R. Prothero, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, puts the point that punctuated equilibrium had its basis in current. Sorry, reading a message. Current.
Oh, hold on a second.
Biological theory.
Hold on a second. Where'd you get that from?
Huh?
Where'd you get that information from?
Oh, a bunch of people have been messaging me stuff
Who
different books.
Who messaged that to you?
What was the guy's name? Come on, Discord. Go to the actual stupid messages. Freeze Peach. Some guy named Freeze Peach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. And who else is sending you messages with information?
Oh no, Free Speech is the one that's doing most of it. Other people are just sending me messages that I was reading.
Okay, Free Speech. Have I ever dealt with you in the past?
He says he can't voice chat. He's doing messaging.
Oh, how convenient. Bye, Free Speech.
Just because someone can't voice chat doesn't mean that they're deceptive. Just maybe they're at work or something.
No, sir. You don't know what's in my notes on his account, do you?
Don't know how to read your account notes.
That's right. Okay, so I have notes on him, my friend. Okay.
Notes. What do the notes say?
I'm not going to get into it at this time. Okay, but okay. I keep on notes, people, so that when they show their ugly faces a week, a month, a year from now, I know.
Notes on me?
Do I have any notes on you? Let me just. It sent you. It says here that you sent me several homoerotic pictures.
Wait, what?
I'm joking.
Do you want some? I could get some pretty easily.
No,
okay.
I wouldn't. Okay, and if you did, I would report you to Discord.
Okay.
Do you have homosexual tendencies? Is that why you don't believe in God?
No. That it was a discovery on my part. Way afterwards. It had nothing to do with my as you would call it, fall from grace.
What's your discovery?
Oh, that Chris Hemsworth is hot. Same thing with Scarlett Johansson.
So you do have homosexual proclivities.
Yeah.
Okay. Why am I not surprised?
I don't know.
Why? Because it's a common trait among many unbelievers.
Oh. Well, okay. I can confidently say that it had nothing to do with my, as you would say, fall from grace.
I seriously doubt that. Okay.
Well, so you can doubt it all you want, but it's the truth.
Explain to me how you went from believing in God to not believing in God.
All right. Well, my biography for that is as such. Was raised by Bible-believing Christians.
No. I didn't ask you about your biography. I said, explain to me how you went from believing in God to not believing in God. Okay, that's not a request for your biography.
Oh, okay. The transition from believing to not believing went as such. I wanted to convince friends of the truth of Christianity, got into listening to debates.
No, you're giving me biography again. How did you come to believe that there is no God?
I came to believe that there is no God. There is no Christian God, because that's the only one I'm concerned with.
No. I didn't. No, see, this is classically what you unbelievers do. You do a bait and switch. Now,
I'm not saying that.
Do you believe that there's a supreme being and a creator of all things that are not himself?
No, I don't believe in that God.
Oh, okay. So when you gave me that answer, you did a classic bait and switch that atheists.
You're talking about the Christian God, though,
okay, sir. Okay, sir. Did you hear what I just said? I said to you, explain to me how you went from believing in God to not believing in God, and what your response is. This is a typical habit that unbelievers have, is that rather than explain global atheism, you go to local atheism. Now, I want you to explain to me how you came to believe. What was it that clicked where you said, oh, there is no creator God?
Okay, I'm confused now.
There's nothing confusing. How did you decide there is no God?
I didn't decide that. I don't believe it.
You did decide it because you once believed that he did, and then you came to believe that he did not. So you made a decision that
about the Christian God.
Proposition, again, are you going to bait and switch again?
I was a Christian, and I stopped being a Christian.
All right, listen to me. I'm going to move on to somebody else if you do it again. You see, I'm asking you about why you believe there is no God, and every time I inquire about this, you do bait and switch. Okay? Now, you are going from global atheism to local atheism. Now, I've corrected you twice that you're doing bait and switch. Do you think I'm so old and feeble like Joe Biden that I don't know what you're doing? Now, we'll try it again. How did you come to believe there is no creator God?
How did I come to believe that there is no creator God? I came to that belief inductively through the lack of evidence.
Okay. So you believe that the God world is false, which means you believe that the not God world is true because the God world is unconvincing?
It was unconvincing.
You believe in the not God world because the God world is unconvincing.
Yes.
Okay.
If we're doing a dichotomy like that, then yes.
That's called an argumentum ad ignorantum fallacy. That's called an appeal to ignorance.
If there are only two options and one of them does not is not explanatory.
Are you going to ignore what I said? Do you know what an appeal to ignorance is?
I do know what you just described it. Yes, and I don't think that was what I did.
That is exactly what you did. Okay, the appeal to ignorance. You correct me if I'm wrong. An appeal to ignorance is that a proposition is true because it's is true solely on the grounds that its negation is unconvincing. Is that an appeal to ignorance?
Because its negation.
I'll repeat it again. A proposition is true solely on the grounds that its negation is unconvincing. The not God world is true solely on the grounds that its negation, the God world, is unconvincing.
I wouldn't say solely, but that is a part of it.
Then no, sir. Then the point is that's a non sequitur. You can no longer use that aspect. So you're going to have to move on to something else that is cogent, because the first answer you gave me is an appeal to ignorance.
Okay. Then I would say that the next step in that process of not believing in God was I There was evidence I would have expected if the God world was true, and I did not find it.
And what would you necessarily expect to see if a creator God existed that you say is missing?
Well, as you put it, I would expect that all facts are derived from him, or it, or whatever gender it is.
That's a global statement. That's not missing evidence.
Wait, what? Say that again. I didn't.
That's not missing evidence. That's just a global declaration. What you're saying is all facts don't derive from God. How do you support that global statement?
Because I have one fact that doesn't derive from him.
And what is that?
The definitional truth of 2 + 2 = 4.
Oh my God! And how old are you?
27.
Okay, you're 27 years old, and you're saying that abstract concepts in the relationships exist with independence from God. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how did you determine that?
Because at no point in the deduction of 2 + 2 = 4 did I reference God.
That's an appeal. That's an appeal to ignorance.
No, because if God was there,
you're not understanding it. You're not understanding it. What you're saying is, God does not exist because abstract objects exist with independence from God. That's your position, correct?
yes,
Good. How did you determine that abstract objects exist with independence from God? How do you know
because
that?
if he existed, he would necessarily have to be referenced in the deduction, and I didn't.
No. Sir, listen to me. In order for abstract objects, we necessarily okay. So what you're saying is abstract objects are evidence of God because God is not necessary. You understand that's your position?
Repeat it, please.
Abstract objects are evidence of a not God world because God is not necessary.
Yes.
Okay, that's fallacious because all you're simply saying is the not God world is true because God doesn't exist. Okay? When you say X is doesn't need God, you're just simply saying God doesn't exist. To say God is not necessary is the equivalent of saying God does not exist. So let me repeat that again. Do
Can
you
I make a
understand do you understand and do you accept as true that to say that God is not necessary in whatever form is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist?
Under your strict definition, yeah, I
No,
can
no,
I can agree
no,
with that.
sir. We're not doing that bullshit here. Okay? Listen carefully. We're not going to go, well, in your world, yeah, no, we're not doing that bullshit here. Okay? That's dishonest. Now, is the statement God is not necessary for Y or X is the sub proposition God is not necessary, is that equivalent to saying God doesn't exist? Of course it is. You just don't want to admit it. That's why you're silent.
No, I'm thinking.
To say
So,
that God is look, listen carefully. When we
okay.
talk about God being the supreme being and the creator of all things that are not himself, under that definition, God is defined as being the necessary precondition. So
Okay.
if you say that God is not necessary for X, you're just simply saying is X exists without God existing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So all you're just simply saying is God doesn't exist.
It's evidence that he doesn't exist.
You're not understanding this. It's going right over your head. To say God is not necessary,
Okay.
regardless of what verbiage you add to it, whatever Christmas ornaments you add to it. When you say God is not necessary, that is the same thing as saying God does not exist. So when you say abstract objects
Mm-hmm.
are real or they are extant, and don't need God, you're just simply saying is abstract objects exist because God doesn't exist. Okay, you just simply that's just an add-on. Okay, they exist without God because
Yo,
God
Darth,
doesn't
what do you think of the
exist.
manhole, Darth? What do you think of the manhole,
Okay,
Darth? Do you
all
like the
right, I'm
manhole,
gonna
Darth?
do.
What do you think of the manhole, Darth Dawkins? What do you think of the
I
manhole,
was here
Darth?
on YouTube.
What do you
I
think?
was here on
Darth, what do you think of the
YouTube,
manhole? Do you like the manhole? Yo, Darth, what do you think of the manhole, Darth?
Prove the case of necessity by stating a fact that does not contain a
When
reference?
you listen carefully, when you say God is not necessary,
Mhm.
that is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist because God is defined as being necessary. If God is not necessary, then God doesn't exist.
Okay. So
Now,
in the
so when you
wait.
do you
Do I gotta say something.
you wait because
All
I'm
right.
not the one who's confused about this. So you said God does not exist because there are abstract objects that
Mm-hmm.
don't necessitate God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's fallacious because you're just
Why?
simply saying is what you're just simply saying is abstract objects exist without reference to the necessity of God. So you are baking into your reasoning that God doesn't exist.
Can I ask
Okay?
something, please?
No, you may not. Just wait. So, do you understand that when you say when I invoke abstract objects, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a concrete object or an abstract object. Okay. Before I continue, do you understand it makes no difference whether you're invoking a concrete or an abstract object? Do you understand it makes no difference?
Sure. Let's go with it.
Okay. So and we'll try to simplify this so people can get a handle on it because most people don't know about abstract objects. Okay. If you say that X, I invoke X, God does not exist because I can invoke God. I can invoke X without the necessity of God. Well, that's not an argument that God doesn't exist. You're just saying it exists because it exists without God existing. God doesn't exist because X exists without God existing.
Yeah. And if God existed, he would have to.
No, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Nigger.
God does not exist. All right, hold on. We got to lock this down.
I mean, it follows that if he's necessary
No,
for all facts.
no, sir, you're making another elementary mistake here. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
hold on. This lockdown's not working.
Yeah.
All right, hopefully, okay, it's working now. You're saying God does not exist because X exists in a world where God doesn't exist. You understand your problem?
Say that again.
You're saying God does not exist because X exists in a world where God doesn't exist. That's your position.
Don't feel like that's what I'm saying.
No. Did you say X exists? You can invoke X without referencing the necessity of God? God does not exist because I can invoke X without referencing the necessity of God.
Yes.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, this is begging the question. So, how did you determine that X exists with independence from God? How'd you determine that? This is literally what you're saying. God does not exist because X can be invoked without referencing the necessity of God. But when you say without referencing the necessity of God, it is the same thing as saying because God doesn't exist. Do you understand your mistake? Now, if
I
you don't
feel like
understand, I've explained this to you 4 times already.
Yeah, and I feel like you're not getting the point that if God existed, he'd have to be referenced.
No, sir. No, listen to me. I've explained this to you 4 times. I'm going to explain it to you one more time. If you don't get it, then either one of 2 things is true. You're either intellectual incapable of understanding it, or you're just practicing resistance to falsification.
Well, you're not
You say
explaining it
God
well
does not. Okay, all right. Okay, you want to be okay, smartass. I did explain it well. Okay, you don't want to understand it because then it means that it will be incumbent upon you to admit that your reasoning is false. Okay, now I'm going to give you one more chance. Okay, which I shouldn't do. I've already explained this 4 times. To say when you say God doesn't exist because X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God. Okay, this is circular. Okay. If you say X is invoked without the necessity of God, therefore God does not exist. That's your position. Are we clear?
All right, sorry. One more time. Say it again.
Okay, you're saying I'm going to clarify it to you. You are saying X is invoked without the necessity of God, therefore God does not exist.
Yes.
Okay, that's begging the question. You're baking in the conclusion into the premise.
It's not baked into the second premise.
Yes, it is. Shall I go over it again with you? If you say X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God, therefore God does not exist. Is that your position?
Yes.
Because it is. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God, when you say without the necessity of God, that is the same thing as saying God does not exist. Okay, you see your mistake?
Sorry, I'm trying to parse it out.
X is invoked without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God. X is invoked without the necessity of referencing God. If you make that statement, then it's the same thing as saying God doesn't exist.
No, it's a counterpoint to the statement that God has to exist.
Okay. You told me you're in your 20s?
Yes, I'm 27.
Okay. Then you're not getting this, okay? X is invoked as actual without referencing the necessity of God. When you tack on without referencing the necessity of God, okay? The phrase without the necessity of God is the equivalent of saying God does not exist. This is not complicated. God is defined as being the necessary precondition of all things. So objects will either be invoked with reference to the necessity of God or without. So if an object is invoked as being with reference to the necessity of God, then it follows from that that's an indirect way of saying God exists. If you say the negative of that, it is an indirect way of saying God does not exist. So to say X can be invoked without referencing the necessity of God, the clause without the necessity of God is another way of saying God doesn't exist. This is not something that you can dispute. This is ironclad.
I'm struggling to find the words because it's
okay. Is like God defined? We're gonna listen. We're gonna go over this rudimentally.
Yeah.
Is God defined as being the necessary precondition of all things?
Yes.
Now, if I say that God is not necessary, like if I said to somebody, why do you believe God does not exist? And they say, well, because God is not necessary. Do you realize that is the same thing as saying God does not exist?
In a roundabout way, because God, if he's defined...
No.
Yeah.
If you say God is not necessary for whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist.
Yeah, because if he was
right, okay, so
existing,
now you agree with me, right?
I feel like you're. Oh yeah, I agree with you on this point. Sure, let's move forward.
Good. So when you say abstract objects can be invoked without referencing the necessity of God, you are smuggling in that God does not exist into the premises when you invoke the conclusion.
No, I don't think that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. If I say X can be invoked without referencing the necessity of God, therefore God doesn't exist. Okay? The statement without the necessity of God is the equivalent of saying God doesn't exist.
No, I'm stating I'm stating an inference.
Hold on a second. Do you know how many times I've been over this with you? To say
Yes.
God is not necessary is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist. Are we clear? If you say God is not necessary, that is equivalent to saying God doesn't exist. Let me ask you this question. Is something that does not exist, can it be a necessary precondition if it doesn't exist?
No.
That's right. So when you say God is not necessary, is that the same thing as saying God doesn't exist?
Yes.
Good. So when you say X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God, you have smuggled in to that statement that God doesn't exist, and then you're saying, therefore, God doesn't exist.
I'm not smuggling in, because what I'm doing is
wait, hold on, stop. My head is going to explode. Okay,
You
to
better
use a
take some
metaphor,
aspirin then.
you're 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I should expect this kind of trouble with a 17-year-old. Listen carefully. If you say God is not necessary, is that the same as saying God doesn't exist?
Yes.
Good. So when you say X can be invoked as actual without the necessity of God, the statement without the necessity of God is the same thing as saying God doesn't exist. Are we clear?
There is a semantic difference between those two statements.
Wow, dude, you can't possibly be this stupid. What you're trying to do now is to save face. You do not want to admit your elementary mistake here because you want to save face in the room. If you say God is not necessary, that equals saying God does not exist. So when you say that X can be invoked without the necessity of God, it is saying X is invoked and God doesn't exist. Okay?
I'm going to make a clarification statement so that hopefully we can clear up some confusion.
I'm really getting fed up here with you. There's nothing needed to be clarified.
Myself.
If you say, well, the frustration isn't on my part because I've gone over this over and over and over and over and over and over again with you. Now,
what I'm saying is
listen, I'm not the one who's confused here. Yeah, I'm not the one who's confused. If you say X is invoked as actual without referencing the necessity of God, within that statement, it is equivalent to saying God doesn't exist and X also exists in a realm where God doesn't exist. X exists in a realm where God doesn't exist. That's your position. Is it true X is invoked as actual in a realm where God doesn't exist.
Yes.
X is real in a realm where God doesn't exist. It makes no difference if you say it that way or if you say X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God. They mean the same thing. God doesn't exist. Okay? So when you say God does not exist because I can invoke X without reference to the necessity of God, you are smuggling in that God doesn't exist into your reasoning, okay, before you get to your conclusion. X is invoked in a realm where God doesn't exist, therefore God doesn't exist. That's your position. Are we clear now?
So, what I am saying...
Are we clear? Your position is X is invoked in a realm where God doesn't exist. X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God. Are the two statements the same? Listen carefully. X exists without the necessity of God. Is that the same proposition as saying X exists? Let me rephrase this. X is invoked without referencing the necessity of God, and X is invoked in a realm where God doesn't exist. They are the same proposition, but put in different statements. Do you understand that the same proposition can be expressed in different statements?
I understand that.
So you're making the same proposition. It's just worded differently in both statements, but it's the same proposition.
How about I proposit my nuts now?
Are we clear?
I am understanding what you're saying. I'm disagreeing with you.
Listen to me. Are both statements the same proposition?
Yes. I am invoking facts.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Without the necessity of God. Which means... Yes.
Listen, dude, I'm really getting pissed with you because I've gone over this with you over and over again. The statement X is invoked and God doesn't exist, okay? X exists coextensively where God does not exist. That is the same proposition as to say that X is invoked without reference to the necessity of God. It is the same proposition, but in different words. So when you say God does not exist, because you say X is invoked without reference to the necessity of God, therefore God doesn't exist. When you make the statement without reference to the necessity of God is the same statement as saying God doesn't exist. You have smuggled in your conclusion into your reasoning.
Okay.
Are we clear now what you're doing?
We're clear. I'd like to rephrase my second premise so that it doesn't do that.
No, there's not a rephrasing of it. You now have to tell me why God doesn't exist.
Because there is no logical contradiction between saying...
Okay, stop right there. Did you just think that up by yourself, or did somebody send that to you in a DM?
I thought of it myself. I've been trying to think of some way to...
All right, you're lying. You're done. Bye-bye. Okay, that's a lie. Okay, this is a recent popular sophist answer that's saying that the not God world doesn't contain an internal contradiction. That does not establish whether or not I'm aware as to whether there's an internal contradiction. Okay, doesn't entail that the not God world is true. Okay. Now, just to be clear, to show you that I am a fair person, all right? Are you saying that God doesn't exist because atheism does not entail an internal contradiction?
I'm saying God does not exist because
I want you to answer my fucking question instead of rewording my question. Are you asserting that atheism is true, that God does not exist, because the not God stipulation doesn't contain an internal contradiction. Is that your position?
Yes.
That doesn't follow. It doesn't follow that there's not an internal contradiction.
It does if you define God as a necessary being.
No, sir. Wow, listen to me. You are a fucking dishonest young man and an embarrassment when you're 27 years old. I have been working with you over the last 45 minutes, being patient. I'm so pissed that I'm actually dropping the F-bomb, which I shouldn't do. I'm wrong for doing that. Now, listen to me carefully. Just because there's not an internal contradiction doesn't make it true. Okay? So, for example, if I say to you, there is a unicorn with a pretty tail. Now, does a unicorn with a pretty tail contain an internal contradiction?
No.
Good. So is it true?
No.
Okay. So the fact that there's not an internal contradiction, it doesn't follow from that it's true.
Okay.
So when you say that God does not exist because the stipulation that the not God world is true because you are unaware of an internal contradiction, it doesn't follow from that God does not exist. Okay, this is another. See, you picked this up either recently or somebody DM'd that to you. This is the latest sophist line of reasoning that is going around. Now we've been over your rationales. Now, God does not exist because, and do not repeat what you have said before because it has been sufficiently debunked. God does not exist because,
and this is why.
Okay, have a nice day, sir. You are in denial, and denial ain't just a river in Egypt. Okay? This is how craven and how deceptive you atheists are. Okay? I've explained to you already that the 3 lines of reasoning that you gave already are fallacious. Right? But you're too dishonest because you're so accustomed to bickering on Discord that you think bickering and verbal gaslighting and verbosity is going to fool people. Maybe that fools a lot of people, but it doesn't fool me. It took me more than a half an hour going over and over and over and over again to explain to you that when you say X is invoked without reference to the necessity of God, the statement, there is no necessity of God, is the same thing that God doesn't exist. And it took you forever to agree with that. I can't imagine that you are this intellectually inept. I don't think you are. Because if I thought you were, I wouldn't have wasted all this time on you. Okay, the floor is open.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Is this fake it till you make it? No,
Yep.
Because you're up too. So you don't know how to talk like an adult. Okay, because when I talked with you the last time, you told me that abstract laws of logic stand in causal relations. Okay.
What? No, I didn't. I said
you did.
Reality.
Explain to me.
Reality.
Explain to me how you know that everything dictates everything. How do you know that?
Well,
here we
like
go again.
Earlier.
This is going to be a repeat of the same bullshit that you shuffled before.
He didn't even get a single word out, bro. Like,
holy shit!
No, but you don't understand because you're a broken record.
Okay, so the answer is like you said, using your own words, when God causes himself, it can be self-reflective, referring to itself. So when we say reality causes reality,
okay. Oh my God, you're going to make my head. Okay, yeah. Listen to me.
How is that a problem?
Okay. What is it singularly and concretely that dictates all instances?
Well, there doesn't need to be a singular or a concrete thing. That's not
okay. So there's nothing. Then what you have is a plurality of things that may or may not be bringing about anything. Okay.
No, that's not the premise either.
Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question: is the causal principle true?
It may or may not be. That's not a part of the.
No, sir. In order for you to talk about any cause and effect, okay, are all instances spontaneous occurrences and acausal.
Well, that maybe, but that's not a part of the argument. So why are
No,
you
no,
doing that?
okay,
Not part of my
okay,
argument.
Tom, you're a broken record. This is why I don't like you. This is why I don't
haven't
like
addressed
you.
my argument.
Hey,
Like my argument doesn't
I
include any of that.
listen, Tom, we've been through this before. You think you're smart and you're not. You're just verbose. You have the gift of gab. It's very simple. Now,
irony.
In order for you, okay, I ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are all events or instances causal or acausal?
It may or may not be. That is not a premise of my argument.
Hey, listen, dipwad. Answer the question. They
Dumbass,
will either
answer
be
my argument.
Okay, bye. You see, all right,
Like,
you're done. All right, yeah. You're a moron. That's why even the atheists realize you're a moron. Okay. See, this is what he does. He's the prince of equivocation. Well, they may or may not be. That's not an answer to my question. What he should say if he was going to be transparent is either yes, all instances, okay, are causal, okay, or no, they're not causal, or I don't know. Okay? Now, how hard is that? Okay? Either all events are causal or they're acausal. Now, he goes, well, they may or may not be. How is that an answer? What if he says they may or may not be? Why doesn't he just say, I don't have the foggiest idea? But you see, he doesn't want to say that. Hold on a second. Hold on. Now, I'm removing the lockdown on the room. I want everybody to locally mute your microphones. Okay. If you don't locally mute your microphone, okay, so let's see. It takes a minute for it to undo. Let me just do this.
So if God is defined as a necessary being, showing
Hold on a
thing
second.
that
Hold
doesn't
on a
have...
second. No. Your welcome is warned out. Okay. I gave you an enormous amount of time and you decided you wanted to be deceptive while you're pretending to be intellectual and discuss and debate the issue. But you are a fundamentally deceitful person. Okay. I made it clear to you. To say that God is not necessary is the same thing as to say that God does not exist. So when you say that X can be invoked without the necessity of God, what you're saying is X is invoked in a realm where God does not exist, therefore God does not exist. This isn't complicated. This isn't rocket surgery. Now, why isn't this lockdown? Oh, I know. Okay, because some of these people may be not server muted. No, that can't be. I don't know why the lockdown's not working. Okay, so if you want, if you want to be unserver muted, you need to leave and come back. But if the heckling starts, I'll just lock the room down again. It just takes me a couple of keystrokes. I don't care. Who wanted to speak with me?
That'd be me.
Who?
Captain.
Okay. Do you have problems comprehending social cues?
No.
Do you, here, I'll say it slowly. Do you have problems with social cues?
No, but I have problems.
How many
with very old
times
men.
did I tell you that I was done with you? Did I not tell you multiple times I'm done with you?
It's fine, but I wasn't done talking. I was trying to explain a point.
Okay. Oh my gosh. And this is why some people have to get restraining orders. Okay. There was somebody else who wanted to speak.